Welcome back to another episode of Force for Growth. I'm Ricardo.
I'm Courtney. Hello, and thank you for joining us. Today, we're going to be discussing Do you really want it? So let's get started.
Do you really want it?
Ah,
Do you really want it? Do you really want it? Doon, 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 do, 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 do.
oh my
Doon,
goodness.
doon,
I'm so
doon,
excited.
do,
I got
do,
a
do,
Ricky
do,
Martin
do.
impersonation. That makes my day.
It's a valid question, though, Courtney. It's a super valid question. Do you really want it?
Yes, and especially when we do jazz hands with it. Um, yeah, and one that needs to be asked often because sometimes our choices change. We just need
Ah,
to figure it out. We don't need to do this lag time where you're just sitting in thinking that you want it like you originally did. You need to make a decision. Are you
yes.
going to do it or are you going to not?
Let's dive in
Decide.
into a real life example, Courtney. What's one thing for you that
Yes,
fits under this category?
my YouTube channel. So,
Ooh.
yeah, streamlining just my activity on my YouTube channel I think at this rate I'll post like something once every 6 months or a year, but the point I want to highlight is a year ago I made a vow to myself that I would put a video up every week no matter what, get better every week, learn as I go, but just put content out consistently once a week. That's not that hard, right? Here we are. I could put one video up. And so I'm having to really ask myself, "Hey, do you really want this? Because I need to build it into my schedule." And I do. I do. So
So then why don't you do it, Courtney? If you really want it, why don't you do it?
because I'm not looking at it for the same reasons that I originally wanted to start it. So right now because I made that vow to myself, that eats me alive when it goes by week and I'm like, "Oh, you haven't posted anything. You haven't even thought about filming, like nothing." And so that's a meaning I'm putting on it. So I'm bringing stress into my life by holding that still so close without having that honest talk with myself about like, "Hey, is this a priority? Is this a now thing or is this a later thing? Is this something maybe just one video a month?" And so that's actually what I'm doing is kind of chunking it down and making it seem more simple in my head instead of more hard in my head, which is how I've been going about it. I've been making it this huge monster and it's not, but I do want it. So I'm going to keep it simple and how I'm gonna approach that is do a video honestly talking about this and say, "Okay, reset button. We are doing this all over again," and go from there. So, but
So
yes, I'm
Courtney,
still
here's the
very
thing.
passionate
Here's the
about
thing, Courtney. Here's the thing. I think that at some point you have to make this a do or die goal, a do or die project. And I got this from Mr. Brendan Bouchard. He's the
yes,
one
he
that
tells
talked
more
about
about
it
that.
before. And he talks about doing this at the beginning of the year because at the beginning of the year, excuse me, at the, oh my goodness, at the beginning of the year, how many goals do we set that we set the year before that were carried over? And that we carry these goals over year after year after year after year.
Mhm.
And he says, that's enough of that.
Yeah.
You need to make this year the do or die year. Either you execute, you get this goal done this year, or you never bring it up again.
Add some fire under it.
Do or die.
Yeah. I
Do or
loved when
die.
you taught me that principle. So, yeah, so I'm taking that because 2021 will be the year that I become consistent on, just a project that makes me happy.
And
That's all
here's the
that
thing
matters.
with that. Here's the thing with the do or die. You mentioned very specifically that it stresses you out, that you feel bad for not doing what you said you were going to do.
Yes.
If you make it a do or die and drop it,
There goes that stress.
there goes that stress. That goes
Yeah.
away.
Yeah. That's where and see, okay, to highlight where I'm at with it, because it's a very relaxed area that I get in where I remind myself, like, hey, I made these rules up. I can also break them, right? I have other higher priorities that are taking precedence and a lot more work than I thought. So, it's just taken over my year to put it blankly. But there's some truth in recognizing that you're the one that set those expectations on yourself. So sometimes you need to lighten up. And then there's other times where you lighten up on yourself and you get in this relaxed zone where you don't do anything for a year or more. There are people talking about their goal 5, 10 years down the road, and they still have not taken one minute step forward to create the
None.
business they want, so
Zip.
I'm it's you just have to draw a line. You have to create the boundary yourself. And I love how Brendan talks about it because it really does. It's like, okay, well, if you add a deadline to it and you don't do it, you're free from it. Like, be honest with yourself. Are you really being honest with yourself if you're not doing it? So that's the learning phase I'm in with this.
And just because you drop it for now doesn't mean you can't pick it up at another time.
Right.
You can always pick it up in 6 months, next year, 2 years from now.
Hmm.
Just
So,
because you do or die doesn't mean you have to drop it forever and ever and ever. You can still pick it up in a reasonable amount of time, not in 1 week, not in 1 month, but just
yeah.
in a longer extended period and not feel guilty about it. Or if you never pick it up again, that's okay too.
And either way, the stress dissipates. So,
Correct.
Ricardo, what is a do or die situation that you learned a lot from? So you can go positive or negative.
Oh man, I was thinking about this and I think that I just do stuff to do stuff because it sounds fun. And I sometimes don't really want it. But once I get into the thick of it, then it's like, okay, this is actually pretty cool.
Hmm.
This is actually pretty cool. This is all right, you
Yeah.
know? And man, let me think about one of many of those situations. Okay, buying a house. I
Mhm.
used to be a bachelor apartment. In other words, I just lived in an apartment forever and ever and ever. And I never really saw myself in a house. And I was very hesitant when we got a little dog. And that was really one of the main reasons that I got the house was because I just wanted to be able to open up the back door and let the dog out to go take care of her business, right? And I didn't really want a house. I was scared. I thought it was going to be a lot of responsibility, a lot of keep up, a lot of maintenance. And then I got it, and I was like, "Ooh, I can never go back to an apartment now."
Right.
But I didn't really want it. I
Mm,
didn't really want a house. I was
yeah,
even like to the day that we signed, I was so hesitant. I was like, "Oh man, like I don't know if I really want this."
that's interesting. Yeah. Well, what kind of so how quickly was it immediately that you knew you're happy you did it, or did that happen over time?
Over time, over the course of 1 year, by the first
Mhm.
year I settled in. I was like, "Man, this is actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
This is actually all right."
You got a beautiful house for your dog.
But
Love
I
that
mean,
part of
but
the
it took
story.
some time. It took some time, right? I had to kind of not just dip my toe in the pool. This is a good example of just jumping in on the deep end, right?
Mhm.
And going for it
On
and
the
giving it a
dotted
try
line.
and seeing it seeing it what happens. But if you don't know if you really want it, if you don't know if you want to do it at all, I suggest just trying it.
Mhm.
Just trying it. Given your example of the YouTube channel, if you post once a week for a month, maybe at the end of that month, you might be like,
Yeah.
I think I'm good.
I don't know because I haven't followed a legitimate schedule. I
Right?
might hate it.
You might hate it. You might hate it, Another
I
one
think I'll hate
was
it, but yeah.
actually this podcast. This
Mhm.
podcast, like when we first started about a year ago, we were just doing it for quarantine because we were locked down at the house.
Yeah.
And it never really occurred to me to post it on the audio channels, right? The iTunes and the Google Play, Amazon, and all these other places where we're at. And it took what? We started in March, April, May, 3 months before I
Mhm.
posted the first episode on the audio version.
Yeah.
So
Which
three
would
months.
What's funny is we started this project as a, "Hey, let's just wing it," and but we ended up having to have real conversations with each other, with people we work with that being like, "Hey, so where are you personally at on this scale? Do you want this? Do you wanna be a part of this project? What do you envision for it?" And we really had to have some real conversations about it involving other
For
people's
real.
priorities too, and it worked out, the way it should and, you know, charge forward, right? But
You gotta want it. But at
you
some
gotta want
point,
it, but
a-
you gotta keep asking it often if you're not being consistent on things, yeah.
correct. And at some point, this did turn from like, it took about a good 3 months before I was like, okay, we're gonna post on the podcast on the audio version, and we're gonna record 3 times a week.
Mhm,
Boom. And that started June 1st. And it took 3 months to get to that moment in June,
mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And I think in June was when I was like, yes, I really do want it. I'm really committed to making this happen. I'm really committed to producing these episodes, and not just producing, but initiating Kanai, constant and never ending improvement. We're going to improve this. We're going to improve that. We're going to tweak this. We're going to tweak that. And we're really going to dial it in and just improve everything that we can about the podcast.
Mm. You know what I'm hearing? An observation. You didn't rely on motivation to get you started and you built actual solid momentum. Hmm.
Hmm.
Interesting how that formula works, huh?
Very interesting.
My theory on that, by the way, is that motivation's not step one. You can't wait for motivation to hit step. Sometimes it does. Motivation likes to show up to the party. So if you're having a good time with a friend talking about a goal, motivation will come. But the next morning when you go to wake up, you're not at the party anymore. Motivation ain't showing up yet. So you have to build momentum. You have to push through that wall and push through that excuse loop and just get it done, and then motivation will come. And the example I always like throw out is, have you ever had a workout you hated afterwards? No. You built momentum, you were thankful that you at least got up and did the workout. So many things are like that. So stop relying on motivation. But down the line, like the very question that we titled this show, it's,
Do you really
do
want
you
it?
really want it
Do
or
you
not?
really
And
want
if
it?
your answer changes, it's okay, but, like, it's all about you being authentically you. Because if you're still giving all this weight and all this space and time and thought to something you don't actually want anymore, what are you doing to the things you do want?
And I'll
That's the
say this.
danger.
I'll say this. I'll say this. Make it easy. Like, how much easier was is it for us to just walk upstairs, to walk to our spaces that we're recording and hit the record button,
Yes. Yeah.
right? You got to
Exactly.
make it easy, because that's one of the things that I'm learning in the tiny habit method. I'm working on getting tiny habit certified, by the way. Ooh. Um,
Yes. Exciting.
it's a mix between motivation and ability, and where they cross, it's that point of execution,
Yeah.
more or less. So you got to have motivation, either high motivation and low ability and high motivation, or high ability and low motivation, and
Mhm.
that'll get you going,
Yeah.
right? So, but the mix is some ability and some motivation, and that's the formula for good long term success in building habits.
Mhm.
So, the ability of us being able to do this remotely really helps a lot.
Yeah.
That I'm not like Courtney, we got to go meet at a studio, we got to go meet in person to record,
Could you
that type of
imagine?
thing. Oh, that
That just makes my head hurt. I'm like, "Oh," not that we wouldn't have done it.
that would have been
'Cause we
brutal.
really want it, but it just would be a lot to pack in, right?
That would have added to the question. Do you really want it though? Right?
Yeah,
That would have added to that. Do you really want it bad enough that you're willing to meet in person to record?
mhm,
And that, I don't know. I can't say that because we didn't
right?
go that route, right? But
Well, we did at one point.
we
I
did.
guess I helped you and Grace one day. I got to sit in on and participate in the original Force for Growth podcast. Yeah,
Correct. And that
uber
was
fans dig and find those. But, uh, we only did it, what, every few months. We'd get
yes,
together every few months and talk about a ton of subjects,
and that
and
was hard.
it was hard.
It was
Yeah.
hard. The ability, the the difficulty was high, and then the
Mhm.
motivation was high,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
then the motivation starts to get weaned down a little bit, and that ability is still hard. So something's got to change.
Mhm.
But either way, but here we are, almost 2 months away from 1 year later
Yay.
of posting 3 times a week, going
Yes.
live 3 times a week, and
It's
that's a
exciting.
that's a rather significant achievement, if I do say so
It is.
myself.
It really taught me a lot about, like, just put put your all into whatever you're working on today, even if you're just winging it, even if you're just seeing what happens, because you don't know what you're building, you
You
know?
don't.
Like, your future's just right now stacked 1,000 times,
So
you know?
comment below for those of you watching, what's something that you really want, that
Yeah.
you really, really, really want, that you're committed to taking action on today.
Yeah.
Comment
And those of
below.
you listening, get out that journal and be as detailed as possible. Be as clear, as concise as well, no, don't I want you to elaborate on this, but be as clear and just to the point with what you want. What do you see when you visualize this? What do you hear? And just really dive deep and visualize that, because you're conjuring up energy towards it. And an amazing 6 a.m. or 6:30 a.m. call with Sean Murphy's team this morning that I sat in on, and he's reading Wallace D. Wattles' The Science of Getting Rich. And I think it was chapter 4 we went over today. But oh my goodness, he talks a lot about, the the thought and the form. It's a very scientific chapter on the thought and the form, but if you have the thought, the form for that to be created in the world is already laid out by God. It's already laid out by the universe. So if you're having the thought, the material formulation is already there and possible. And it was just this gigantic concept that it's almost too simple to grasp. But that is a book, The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace D. Wattles, or how we say that backwards. So yeah, an
Good one.
amazing one that I haven't listened to the whole content on. But have
Let's
you read
change
that?
lanes real quick. Let's
Yes.
change it. Let's change lanes.
Okay.
Okay, real quick. I want to talk about what happens when you think you want something and it doesn't work out, and what happens when you think you want something and it does work out.
Hmm. Well, if it doesn't work out, that's feedback.
It
If it
is
does
big
work out,
feedback.
that's feedback. So how are you approaching it in those situations?
It is. So, what's an
Uh,
example of something that you got into that you thought you wanted and it didn't work out at all?
I the okay, so when I came to my new job, it was basically for a different position, and it went a different direction, and it was I'm so grateful that it turned out the for plan B versus plan A, because it's so much more of what I wanted. It's more on the course of the path of what I was after. So many details there. But yeah, that's one that literally signed up for a new job intending to do this and ended up having to switch that up, which was terrifying. I was brand new at a new agency and getting my feet in the water as an independent. I mean, it was terrifying. But I had to trust myself.
But so, in the middle of the whole thing, it was a change of plans. You had to pivot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
But
I had
you would
already
have,
set up my entire year,
but
and I had to redo it.
is it fair to say that those wheels would have never been set in motion if you would have never taken that chance and jumped into this job?
200%.
Okay.
Yeah. I had to get through the test phase. I had
So,
to get through the terror barrier phase, or that was just trying me and my weaknesses. I had to push through and grow through that in order to
so even if you really want it, you take a chance, you take a leap of faith, right? And even things might turn out even better than you thought, or different, or a change in direction, but you still have to take that leap of faith and jump in there and put yourself in the situation to make something happen.
exactly. Yeah. Without a leap of faith, typically those big connections aren't made. Those big
You
revelations
can't sit
aren't
on the sidelines,
formed.
is what we're
Yeah.
saying. You can't sit on
Not
the
at all.
sidelines. You can't sit
Not
on the
at all.
sidelines.
No, you have to be in the arena. You have to be, "Okay, another round. Okay, let's go another round." And I wish there was, like, a better way to say this, but you
There's
have
not.
to keep at it. Like, there's no secret except for, "Okay, I know it was hard today. Sorry, it was brought some tears, but get up tomorrow. Do
So
it
let me
again.
ask you
Try it
this:
again."
if you quit the job, you started at the new job, you thought that's what you really wanted, you were really in there. This is what I really want. I'm going
Mhm.
for it. Let's go. If it would have not worked out, what would have been the contingency plan?
Well, it was halfway to go back to what I know and go back to a different agency with the same insurance company that I had priorly worked for, go back to
Mhm.
my comfort zone, okay? Or it was just trust that I trust myself and trust the agency I joined and things like that. Anyway, just I really had to trust myself.
You still had options, though.
I did. I
You
did.
still
And
had options.
that's a good point, because in the moment I was like, "What else am I gonna do? There's nothing else." Like, da da da. There's these one or A or B, right? And looking back, okay, so like since then, to be very honest, I've had a friend that works in IT and insurance software approach me and say, "Hey, if you're ever not interested in working in claim sales, underwriting, you name it, all the things I've done, there's a new department where, you could work in
Boom.
the IT side." And I mean, it literally opened up a new level in my brain where I was like, I did not even know about that, because the agency I'm at now uses a software, and so I'm familiar with it. And anyway, I made that connections are all around us. You just don't know it yet. And he showed up to a meeting one day in that shirt, and I was like, anyway. So it resulted in a meaningful conversation where I just know it's a backup. I just know it's a backup. And so yeah, since then, I mean, I might start my own agency. There's just so many possibilities. I'm not saying I want to do that right now. I love the agency I'm with. However, it's all possible. It's all
There's an
possible. It's like you
opportunity.
get to a certain point in the road because you took the leap of faith, because you pushed through, and then suddenly you can see the next few miles of the road. And maybe they're more exciting than you thought. Yeah, they're
It's a
definitely
new
more exciting than the
opportunity.
last few miles were.
It's a new opportunity.
Yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
point. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah. It's a really good opportunity.
Yeah.
So, first of all, if you really want it, you have to go for it. That's the bottom line. You have to go
Mhm.
for it. If it's either jumping in on the deep end of the pool or just sticking your toe in there, you have to go for it.
Mhm. Yeah.
Otherwise, maybe you really don't want it.
Yeah.
Like, if you're not even willing to do anything about it, eh, I would question you. If I was your coach, I would question you and ask you, do you really want it? Is this something you really want to do? Because the
Yeah.
fact of the matter is that it's been scientifically proven, plus it's common sense that it's a lot easier to do something that you really want to do.
Yeah. Absolutely. I know. It's just all of these, like, I don't know, just like journal on what you feel forced to do
So
and
you have
ask
to go
yourself,
for
am
it.
I forcing myself to do that? Or is that actually legitimately something, I need to do for other people? But like,
And
we're walking around with this laundry list and it's
I'll
not
say
getting
this,
done.
Courtney. Just because you think you have to jump in at the deep end of the pool and burn your boats doesn't mean that you really have to burn your boats to try this endeavor and to see if this is something that you would be interested in.
Right.
There's always opportunities to dabble in this, to go see if it's a good fit without burning your boats.
Mhm.
Now, if you are the burn your boats type of person and you know deep in your heart that this is something that you really want to do, I would still suggest maybe not burning all the boats.
Yeah. Don't
You
burn
know,
all the bridges or all the boats,
you
okay?
have to be
It's a metaphor.
you have to be strategic about it, right? You have to be strategic about it. You have to be strategic about making these decisions, especially if you have a family, if you have things that you got to take care of, right? But that
Mhm.
doesn't mean that you can't give it a try.
Yeah. Or
But it
try it
has
on like a pair of pants. I remember
yes.
you used that phrase once. Yeah.
And it has to start with asking yourself, do you really want it? And if you do, go for it. If you don't, just lay the goal down. Lay the project down. It's okay. We give you permission right now, this very second, to put that project down
Yes.
if you determine that you don't really want it.
And that's okay. Because look what you're freeing up for what you do want. You're freeing up all that time, all that space, all that energy.
And even when you jump in on the deep end of the pool, just like Courtney, it might be great. You might end up loving it, or there might be a pivot in there where you're going to end up in a better place than you thought you were going to be when you went for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, that would be the ultimate, wouldn't
You
it?
only know if you just keep growing. Yeah.
Grow, grow, grow,
Just
grow,
give it
grow.
and take the feedback. We're not saying like keep trying something for the next 5 years, even though, you know, you're not sure. Just what is top on your list? What is on that dream list of yours that you're not doing?
Do you
If you
really
don't
want
make
it?
time for it soon, like your life's going to be gone. So
Do you
just,
really want it?
yeah.
Make it do or die.
I wish I
Make
had a
it do or
meme that was
die.
just Ricardo being like, "Do you really want it?" Like,
I think I should make that. And make it a do or die. I think that's the final tip. Make it a do
yeah.
or die. If this is something you've been thinking about, if this is something that you've been really working towards and that you want to do, but you haven't done very much towards this, set a deadline and just say, okay, if I don't start on this goal, this project, this whatever by this time, it's done.
Mhm.
I'm going to put it down and be done with it. Sauce.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sauce. All right.
And then you're
That's
free.
it.
You got yeah.
That's it.
I'm all
Thank
fired
you
up
so
now.
much for tuning in to another episode of Force for Growth. Or should I say Force for Growth podcast? I don't know.
I don't know. Let's see.
Let me try it. Thank
Okay.
you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Force for Growth podcast.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Meh. I don't know. I like the first one.
We'll see.
Let us know, y'all, if y'all are listening.
Yeah. Either way, again, for the third time, thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Force for Growth. And remember to be a force for good
Force for growth.
and a force for greatness.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.